Imagine waking up one morning and finding out that one of the biggest cash robberies in the history of the United Kingdom was planned by an MMA fighter who grew up just a few streets away. A man who people knew for his knockouts, his street fights, and his temper. But no one imagined he would mastermind a crime like this. His name was Lee Murray. To some, he was a talented fighter who could have become a UFC star. To others, he was just another violent kid from a broken home. But behind the fame, behind the muscles, and behind the bravado, Murray was hiding something darker. His life didn't start with cages or championships. It started with fear, the kind of fear you grow up with when your own house feels like a battlefield. And the violence he learned as a child would follow him everywhere he went. But the real mystery is the part that still confuses investigators. Even today, is how Murray and his crew got access to the confidential blueprint of a high-security cash depot. Was it bribery, inside help, threats, or something even worse? This is the unbelievable rise and fall of Lee Murray. Lee Murray's story begins in South London, inside a home where peace barely existed. His father had a serious drinking problem, and nearly every night ended the same way: shouting, smashing, and chaos. Whenever he came home drunk, the house turned into a war zone, and Lee, still just a kid, found himself in the middle of it. He watched his father fight with his mother. He watched arguments turn physical, and eventually, he stepped in. A child trying to protect his family from a grown man. That kind of pressure forces a boy to grow up fast, and Murray grew up hard. Teachers noticed his aggression. Kids noticed his fists. Fights were normal for him, almost routine. While other kids played, sports or video games, Lee was learning how to survive through violence. He wasn't trying to be a bully. He was just reacting to the world he lived in. Over time, that anger became part of him. It shaped his personality, his reactions, and his view of power. If someone pushed him, he pushed back 10 times harder. And as he grew older, he discovered something that would define the next chapter of his life: the streets. South London in the 1990s was full of street crews, and one of the most well-known groups was the Buttmash Gang. These weren't kids pretending to be tough. These were real street soldiers, controlling different blocks, settling disputes with violence, and building reputations through fear. And Lee Murray fit in immediately. He was strong, quick, fearless, and always ready to fight. He became known as someone you didn't want to cross. But the streets weren't just about looking tough, they were full of rivalries. One of the most intense confrontations during that ERA was between the Buttmash Gang and a group of Nigerians known for defending their territory with equal force. The tension turned into fights, sometimes planned, sometimes sudden. Murray was in the middle of these battles, earning respect but also building a dangerous record. These weren't schoolyard fights, they were violent clashes that shaped how people saw him. In these moments, Murray started becoming more than just a troubled kid. He was becoming someone feared, someone unpredictable, someone who believed that physical power could solve everything. But the same aggression that made him a threat on the streets would soon catch the attention of a completely different world, the world of mixed martial arts. When Lee Murray entered the world of MMA, it felt like a natural fit. All the fights he had survived growing up had given him the toughness and confidence most fighters needed years to build. And inside the cage, Lee was explosive. He had power, speed, and a wild, fearless style that attracted attention. He gained local fame quickly. Crowds loved the chaos he brought to every match. Promoters loved that he could sell tickets. Even UFC fighters recognized him. Some described him as a fighter with real potential. There was even a popular story about him getting into a nightclub fight with Tito Ortiz, one of the biggest names in the UFC at the time. But success in MMA didn't change his mindset. Instead of pulling him away from the streets, fame created new connections, wealthier criminals, riskier opportunities, and bigger temptations. And behind the gloves and cameras, Murray still carried the anger and hunger for control that came from his childhood. To him, fighting wasn't just a sport, it was survival. And that mindset would eventually lead him into a plan so bold and so dangerous that the entire country would never forget it. Every major crime has a moment where the idea first forms, and for Lee Murray, that moment came when he learned about the Securitas cash depot in Kent. It was one of the most secure facilities in the UK, holding a massive amounts of money at any given time. Breaking into it seemed impossible. But then something unusual happened. Someone in Murray's circle obtained the confidential blueprint of the building, including the layout, the security cameras, the vault placement, and the guard routes. And this is where the mystery deepens. To this day, no one knows for sure how the plans were acquired. Some investigators believe someone was bribed. Others think the crew targeted an inside worker who felt threatened. There were even rumors about pressure being placed on a family member of someone connected to the depot. No theory has ever been confirmed, but one thing is clear: the blueprints changed everything. With it, Murray and his team could plan every step with precision. They knew where to enter, who to target, and how to escape. And once the plan was in motion, there was no turning back. On February 21st, 2006, Lee Murray and his crew carried out one of the most detailed and daring heists ever recorded in the UK. The operation began with a kidnapping. They intercepted the depot manager while he was driving home, posing as police officers. Then they kidnapped his family to pressure him into cooperating. Terrified and with no choice, the manager guided them into the secure building. Once inside the depot, the crew moved like they had rehearsed it 100 times. They tied up the staff, kept everyone calm, and directed the workers away from alarm systems. The blueprint allowed them to avoid mistakes, avoid dead ends, and avoid corners that were monitored too heavily. The crew loaded £53 million into their vehicle, the largest cash robbery ever seen in the United Kingdom. Everything was working perfectly. Every detail was going according to the plan. Murray was convinced this would be the moment. He walked away from MMA and into a life of permanent wealth. But even perfect plans have weak spots. The crew made small mistakes that investigators later used to track them. CCTV sightings, car rentals, phone connections. And the biggest mistake was spending the money too quickly. Instead of laying low, some members of the crew started flashing their new wealth, raising suspicion. Investigators closed in fast, and Lee Murray's escape was about to begin. When the story closes, one question remains. Was Lee Murray born dangerous? Or was he shaped by the constant violence he grew up with? His father's drinking, the fights at home, the chaos he lived through. All of these moments built the mindset he carried into adulthood. He had talent, potential, and opportunities most fighters never get. But every time life pushed him toward the right path, he veered back toward aggression and control. The heist wasn't just a crime. It was the final chapter of a life shaped by instability. And in the end, the violence he learned as a child came full circle. Did you enjoy this breakdown and want more dives into real cases, crimes, and hidden histories? Make sure to watch my channel. There will be a new documentary every week, and each one explores a story even more shocking than the last. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the coming video.